Hello, I'm Renee Brown. I'm the new president of the Secondary School Writing Centers Association. I'm here with Mr. Seth Zarnecki, who is the Northeast Regional Representative for SWACA, and Mr. Paul Probst, who is the 2-year tutor rep for SWACA, both of whom are from Algonquin Regional High School in Massachusetts. I run a middle school writing center in Peters Township Middle School, which is just south of Pittsburgh. We're here today because we wanted to do a summary of our roundtable discussions about how to take your writing center into a digital space because of the interest in that topic. What struck me most during our conversation was the motivation that Algonquin had. So most of us have been thinking about moving online as reaction to the coronavirus and a way to sustain ourselves. But Algonquin had the foresight to realize that going online serves a larger purpose. It allows for more inclusion because students who otherwise wouldn't be able to come to our center or wouldn't be able to work as tutors are able to do that when you move to an online setting. So it actually fosters inclusivity, which I thought was a wonderful way to approach this shift. So I'm gonna let Paul talk a little bit about what struck him from our conversation.
So there were several big concerns that stuck out to me from participants of our roundtables. One of them was a concern with the complexity of logistics required to set up a system for online tutoring and the potential liability that comes when you're setting up a new system in this virtual space, especially when you're dealing with minors. So one of the options that we presented is that asynchronous tutoring is always an option moving forward with online tutoring. It's less complex because you don't have to coordinate schedules and make sure those line up. And there's less potential liability because you don't have students and tutors holding video calls that you have to worry about keeping track of or monitoring or recording. That's what we did for our first year, sort of as a stepping stone. Hopefully we'll eventually move to synchronous, but asynchronous is always a great first step. Another tip that we shared is to use tools and softwares that are already supported by the school. This prevents liability because it's already supported by your administration and district, so it'll be easier to get them on board. And it also reduces complexity because the directors, the students, the writers, the tutors already know how to use these tools. For example, at Algonquin, everyone in our district has a Google account and uses Google Docs. So everyone already knows how to use those tools, and so that's what we used for our synchronous, is we basically built our system around those tools with the knowledge that everyone already had a basic understanding of how that worked. So there wasn't too much of a learning curve with, getting people to download new software, things like that. And the other big concern that I noticed within this roundtable was the concern that online tutoring would basically turn into a fix-it-up shop, and that writing centers wouldn't be able to honor their values in the online space, especially with asynchronous tutoring when you don't have that face-to-face interaction. The way we approach this at Algonquin is when we trained our tutors in online tutoring, we went in with the understanding that we didn't want them to change any of the principles or methodologies that they had learned with in-person tutoring, because those were sort of the gold standard. That's what we wanted them to keep. So what we trained them in was basically how to use the new technology. We didn't retrain them how to tutor. We just taught them how to apply the new tools in the new context, but use the same principles. And there are also ways to add on different layers to tutoring to add on, to include your values. For example, again, we used Google Docs and basically just use the commenting on feature of Google Docs for tutors to leave their responses, which can easily turn it into that fix-it-up mentality. However, we also had the students include a bio that they sent to the tutor sent a bio that they sent to the student had the opportunity to see a picture of their tutor on our website, to sort of build that rapport. And so there are a lot of little things that you can add to your system to make sure that you keep it as close to as possible to that ideal in-person student-tutor relationship. Mr. C?
Yeah, and just to sort of underscore Paul's point there, as directors and in our tutor training, it's very important for us, I think, and it was important for me to make sure that I was drawing that direct connection between what you learned in our tutor training class and the thing that we're asking you to do in the asynchronous environment. And drawing that direct connection helps the tutors sort of understand that those methodologies still apply, even though the environment is very different. Yeah, and so one of the things that was really that really stood out to me during our two roundtable discussions was the importance of student ownership and leadership when conceptualizing and implementing your online tutoring platform, no matter what shape it takes. For one, just as a practical matter, you know, as directors, we have so many, you know, plate spinning, whatever the metaphor is, but we have so many things to sort of observe and account for and facilitate, both as directors and as teachers, that it's important just for our own well-being to bring our students in and have them carry some of the operational and managerial burden that comes along with online tutoring. But more importantly, by making your tutors and your staff a part of the design, they will feel more invested, I think, in the program than if you were to design it on your own unilaterally and say, okay, guys, this is what we're doing now. Instead, bringing them in, asking them, you know, what model would work best for them and their peers. That's another thing that's really important, that, you know, what we directors think works for our students sometimes when it pertains to technology doesn't always translate. And I know that for us, a lot of the insight about what students would do and wouldn't do came from, or what platforms they'd be comfortable on, came from our staff members, because they were involved in that conversation. So that's really important. And the investment in the online platform from our staff is essential to its longevity, I think. So a couple ways to do that. You know, we were very lucky to have somebody like Paul, who's very motivated to want to design our program. But, you know, a team, a subcommittee can be put together to sort of conceptualize and design the program. You know, that's my cat. That's an interesting wrinkle. But yeah, a subcommittee can be put together to design and troubleshoot the program. There could be a team put together to sort of assess whether the program is adhering to your Writing Center's values and practices, and an ongoing sort of you know, working group to assess how well your online platform is functioning. So student leadership and ownership, I think, is essential to making the program really work over the long term. And another thing that stood out to me was, and something I hadn't thought of, is that typically when we think of our online tutoring, we think of it as very sort of limited to asynchronous tutoring or synchronous tutoring. But if we think about our physical spaces, we do so much more than just one-on-one tutoring. We run workshops, we have speaker series, we might have resources like pamphlets or handouts or brochures in our physical spaces. And all of that, I think, is transferable to the online space. With just a little bit of planning and some creativity, we could have robust online Writing Center spaces that mirror almost all of what we do in the physical space. And so to think, one of the core takeaways for me was to think about how we can make our online center robust. in the same way that our physical space is. And that was really meaningful to me, I think. I don't know.
I'll just, some of the technologies that were mentioned, obviously WC Online, which is a sponsor of SWACO, is a great one if you can afford it. But other people mentioned that they were using youcanbook.me and Acuity, which are also online scheduling, and they often sync with a Zoom or a Google Hangout if you are looking for a synchronous pair up and match up. So I know that that was also part of our conversation. We are going to post some online resources for directors who are trying to make this switch. So on our website under resources, we will continue to add to that as we can. And if you have resources you'd like to share with us, please email the SWACA board. We'd love to hear what's working for you. Gentlemen, any final thoughts? So thank you so much, and good luck everybody at this school year.